Hi. First of all, my name is Alexis Haw. I'm a high school student that will be entering my junior year at Sage Hill. I'm also a participant in Dr. Wong's lab, and I'm helping kind of promote the Bridge Ventilator Consortium, and I'm managing the website. So first off, could you guys tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, some of your accomplishments and credentials? Either one. It does.
Sure thing. So my name's Kevin Zagorski. I am in the normal day today. I'm the manager of the advanced manufacturing group in the propulsion department at Virgin Orbit, which is a pretty long set of wording just to say that I work with a lot of the ways that we try and find ways to build better rockets with 3D printing, with other advanced manufacturing technologies. And then as part of the ventilator project, I've been the technical project lead overall.
And hi, my name is Will Pomerantz. I'm Vice President of Special Projects here at Virgin Orbit, and I've had the good fortune of being with the team from the very beginning, so I'm employee number one. Have gotten to do a lot of different things over the years, having joined even a little earlier than Kevin, who's in our first wave of employees as well. And then related to the Virgin Orbit Ventilator project, I got to spearhead some of our work with the Food and Drug Administration to get our Emergency Use Authorization, as well as some of the exciting conversations we've had with humanitarian and philanthropic organizations around the world to help get designs like this, including ours and others, out into the parts of the world where they're most needed.
Great, thank you. Could you maybe explain how your ventilator works, the name of your design, the pros and cons, maybe a couple of the fundamental mechanisms, sorry.
Yeah, sure thing. So it's a pretty straightforward name. We call it the Virgin Orbit Ventilator. The way it works is similar to a lot of the other concepts for these types of bridge ventilators. And I might add, we didn't come up with the concept on our own. We engaged with this group, the BVC, from the beginning, just to see where we could help from our standpoint of being a lean manufacturing organization that can rapidly respond to problems. And so, we had those initial conversations to figure out how we could help, and left them thinking that we could probably, help by building a device ourselves. And, we leaned really heavily into the expertise that Dr. Wong, Dr. Rajan, some of our other medical advisors had on the design and development of the device, because obviously we're not, a traditional medical manufacturer. So we wanted to make sure, in order to provide a product that is effective and useful and safe, we really relied on a lot of outside expertise from folks who are familiar with respiratory systems, respiratory equipment, ventilators, and how patients interact with them. So the way that ours works is it actually, in and of itself, it's just a way to simulate the human hand with a little bit more precision than a human can. Because it takes advantage of a device called an ambubag or a resuscitator bag, which has been commonly used in the medical field for years and decades at this point. So rather than have a person who needs to be squeezing this bag in order to mechanically ventilate a patient for hours at a time and potentially expose a non-COVID person to the virus, we basically took a approach of developing a very, very simple, very robust design that can squeeze that bag and has some alarms that are important to the clinicians, and also has the flexibility to deliver a range of tidal volumes and pressures and breaths per minute that are helpful and useful for patients that are suffering from COVID-19.
That's great. Also, could you please explain the current status of your ventilator? Is it being manufactured, distributed? And do you have any partnerships with local manufacturers?
Yeah, I'll take a little bit of that, and then Will can probably fill in some of the rest. So we are working with the State of California Office of Emergency Services to provide about 600 ventilator units to the state of California to add to their stockpile, which is really exciting. We're producing all of those in-house. We also have some partnerships with some potential outside suppliers. If there is a larger wave, a bigger need that Virgin Orbit couldn't produce internally on our own, we like we said have a very simple design that can be rapidly produced, whether here in the U.S. or elsewhere internationally. So, Will, if you want to tack onto that.
Yeah, so what we found as the COVID-19 pandemic has progressed, and as like everyone, we're glued to the statistics about where infection rates are rising, where mortality rates are rising, where hospital systems are being overwhelmed. We're trying to keep our finger on the pulse of who needs equipment the most and who might need equipment that has the specific strengths and weaknesses that Kevin just discussed. And as time has gone on, that need hasn't necessarily been here in the United States. With a little bit of time and with people, for the most part, being good about social distancing, we were able to get a lot of our hospitals better equipped, better up to speed to deal with this. Now that may be changing as we get into the second wave, or as the first wave extends longer than we hoped it would. But clearly, when we look at other parts of the world, we're seeing just massive amounts of need that are already huge, that look absolutely terrifying when you look at almost any projection system for what they might be a few months from now. And we're talking about parts of the world that do not have huge financial means and that also are not already well stocked with equipment like this. So if you look at places like all of Africa, you sometimes have entire countries that have only a couple ventilators currently in staff and are projecting the need for thousands or tens of thousands. So what we tried to be upfront about from the very start was that, as Kevin mentioned, we're not a traditional medical device manufacturer. We are not going into this to really beef up the profit margins in our medical devices unit. We're doing this because it seemed like the world needed a system like this, and we were willing to contribute both the minds of bright people like Kevin to designing them, and then also the sweat of our labor to go ahead and manufacture units like this. But mainly, we just wanted to help people and to help other people help people. So we sort of indicated to the world as best we could our enthusiasm for talking to other groups who might be designing similar things, that wanted to collaborate and share lessons, but also to go and share our design specifically with others that might manufacture it and other reasons. Particularly with the travel industry and the global supply chain as impacted as it has been by this pandemic. Even if we were building ventilators 24/7, 365 at our Long Beach, California headquarters, it just takes an awfully long time to get them to India or to Africa, and it adds a huge amount to the cost. And then that we've already seen, sometimes things, some countries will close their borders for a while because they're experiencing a big spike in COVID-19, and now you just can't get anything in no matter what. So we've been working closely with our friends at Virgin Unite, which is the philanthropic arm of our parent company, the Virgin Group, to try and connect both with potential manufacturing facilities and with humanitarian and philanthropic organizations outside of the United States who might figure out ways to make that possible. And the first step of that, I know we're all incredibly proud of, is that we have connected with a group of incredible philanthropists, a gentleman named Strive Masayiwa, who is a Zimbabwean billionaire who's got his money in the telecom industry, but has become hugely committed to the cause of health in Africa. He's been, an official, I forget his exact title, but a health attaché, health advocate for the African CDC. We've connected with him and a gentleman named Jeff Skoll, who's a North American entrepreneur. And they, in turn, have helped us connect to many local and regional governments within Africa. And also, we, working together, found a local manufacturing partner called Invicta Holdings and BMG in South Africa. So we now have a group that's been working closely with Kevin to figure out how to build and test and assure the quality of these ventilators. And then working with Strive and Jeff and their teams, philanthropists have funded the first 1,000 ventilators to be built and given away for free.
Fantastic.
They've partnered with President Ramaphosa, the president of South Africa and the chair of the African Union, has stepped up to create a platform for African governments to go and purchase all kinds of medical supplies, whether that's masks or gowns or ventilators or hoods or whatever else, So this ventilator design is one of the very first items to be listed on that site. The first 1,000 of them are free. And then after that, Invicta has committed to selling them at cost. So they're now starting to be ordered, not manufactured by us, manufactured by this fantastic organization, and supplied out into that community. We're having similar conversations now in other parts of the world, and it does sometimes take a while to find a manufacturer, not only who's capable of building them, and they're not necessarily that hard to build, but who has ready access to the supplies that are required to properly make these things and to test these things and to do quality control on every individual unit. So we have hopefully some other further announcements might be coming on that, but even if they don't, we're really proud of what's happening in Africa already.
Yeah, definitely. And let us know when you have any of your other advancements that you would like us to share with our audience base. And I think that's really fantastic that you guys are taking that step to really move it into a philanthropic kind of vehicle. And I think that's one thing that's really amazing about your group is that that's something that you're considering. And then we have all these like pharma companies that are so aggressive that like, they want to be the first to have the vaccine out, and they're going to charge everyone, God knows how much. And so it's really, really fantastic that you guys are doing that. I'm really, really happy to hear that.
Yeah, that's really great. Thank you so much. Could you, on that note, could you talk a little bit about obviously the FDA Emergency Use Authorization has been passed, but could you talk a little bit about how you filed your documentation and some of the challenges that you faced during that process? And then maybe some advice that you would give to other people going down a similar path for the ventilator?
Yeah, happy to. So that was obviously a brand new experience for us. We come from a very heavily regulated industry, so we're pretty used to working with government regulators. We just normally work with the FAA, not the FDA. And after a couple months now, I finally have stopped mixing up the acronyms when I'm talking to people from those organizations. But when Kevin and some of our colleagues started patching into the BBC phone calls and really learning from the incredible clinicians in the BBC about what kind of device was needed and about how it might actually be used at bedside or wherever else. We also started to go and do our homework on the emergency use authorization. And what we found was, and I think a lot of credit goes to the regulators here, that the government had stepped up and said, hey, this is an unusual circumstance. And if we just take our normal authorization process, which I'm not an expert in, but seems to me to be important and well thought through and appropriate, but it clearly wasn't appropriate for the COVID-19 crisis. Because if anyone, whether it was a brand new to this industry at least, entity like us, or a traditional medical device manufacturer, if they were to run through the normal process, you're talking months, if not years, to get a product approved, and a year later, stuff wasn't going to matter. Too many lives would have been lost, and too many horrible decisions would have been made along the way. So they created this process, or they sort of modernized this process called emergency use authorization, which is essentially a way to really streamline things and to develop a product that would ultimately be explicitly labeled for the hospital systems and the doctors, nurses, EMTs that were going to use it to say, hey, this hasn't gone through the normal process. Don't treat it as though it has. Don't assume that it has. Don't buy it and keep using it for decades. But if you're in a situation where you've got nothing, here's something that might work pretty well. And so we found, we were able to find all the paperwork online for how to fill out one of those forms. Again, we had the advantage that we have people who are used to dealing with, forms that are not entirely dissimilar. We've got people who are used to doing risk analysis. We've got people who are used to doing validation and verification of really important hardware that absolutely cannot fail. We've got people who are used to, testing fluids moving through systems, and a lot of the same bells and whistles that would need to go into a ventilator design. So we were able to pull together a package relatively quickly. I think, our initial submission to the FDA was pretty brief. It was a couple pages of stats that honestly they were inputs that we had received primarily from the BBC about what we needed in terms of PEEP and everything else, a lot of the ratios and the metrics that a doctor or nurse would look for in a device like this. And then a quick overview of how we build stuff, of how we tell stuff that was largely cut and pasted from what we do with our normal job. It took a little while to get FDA to notice us, just because I think so many other people were applying, and I know for sure their inboxes were overwhelmed. But once we had a clear line of communications established with the FDA, again, my hat's off to those women and men who are working in extraordinary circumstances and clearly are giving it their all. We had a great dialogue going back and forth between them. We were getting emails at midnight on a Sunday night where folks are clearly literally burning the midnight oil to go through these to go through all these applications. They asked hard questions, but they were logical questions that were meaningful and relevant to what we were doing. They had serious questions about where they clearly had dug into the testing data that we had provided them, and wanted to ask why we were seeing certain things in the data, and had we thought about X, Y, and Z, and had we run other kinds of tests. But always with a very positive attitude of not looking for reasons to say no, just making sure that we'd really done all the homework. And again, thanks to smart people like Kevin and a bunch of others, women and men on our team, we were able to pull that together. I've forgotten the exact timeline, but I think from the moment we had our first hour-long teleconference with FDA staff until the time that we had the authorization in hand was about two weeks or so. It was
30 days.
That's very fast. That's
30 days from starting, and I
Wow.
think starting to work on the first prototype to having not only a completed prototype and a manufacturing line set up, but the authorization in hand. So it was a pretty speedy process. It was probably not as scary and as cumbersome as some people might have assumed.
This question is for Mr. Zagorski. Could you comment on the type of wiper motor that would be sufficiently reliable for use in an ambi bag ventilator?
Well, there isn't really a specific type, and that was actually one of the challenges that took appropriately a lot of our time early on, was understanding the quality control level of these commercial wiper motors. Obviously, given their application, they operate for tens of thousands of cycles without failure on cars every day, and they're produced in quantities of hundreds of thousands of millions per year. So they were chosen by us, and they were chosen by other bridge ventilator groups just because of that, because of the robustness of the design and wanting to utilize a commercial off-the-shelf component that could get the job done. The downside of that being, though, that a lot of these wiper manufacturers being from large international automotive companies, it's sometimes hard to access some of the quality control information and have access to manufacturing engineers at these companies. So absent that, the onus is then on us to perform extensive testing on our end to determine that they're operating consistently and safely, and then screening out any motors during our production and testing and acceptance testing that aren't operating normally. So that's really the approach that we took, knowing that there was really an accelerated need for these, and not necessarily having as much access as we would like to some of the manufacturing folks who build these things. So we just translated that into a additional level of testing just to screen those out. In the meantime, we have, for the purposes that Will mentioned of our partnerships and working with companies overseas, we want to make sure that they're learning the lessons that we've learned over the course of developing this device. And in that time, we've come across, for example, manufacturers in the U.S. for wiper motors who do have quality and manufacturing engineering teams that are more accessible. So we're trying to pass that knowledge along to any folks who are looking at our design and potentially trying to build on it, just to make sure that we're once again continuing to field the most manufacturable and robust device possible.
Right. And then when you were going through your testing and screening, did you find that having the windshield wiper in like harsher environments like different heat, humidity, like extreme cold, would that affect the function of the wiper motor?
Yeah, we have some what we call qualification testing that was required by the FDA under the Emergency Use Authorization. So we did perform some tests that I wouldn't say excessively low or excessively high temperatures, but definitely wanted a top and bottom to our standard room temperature testing that we've been doing. And our hot and cold testing exhibited, no major issues with the performance. But once again, being that this is a non, standard medical device, it's something that we need to research. But you also have a little bit of confidence going in, knowing that motors such as these, when they're attached in commercial automotive vehicles, they operate in rain, snow, wind, all that. So we had a little bit of confidence going in, but just wanted to make sure that we validated through testing that they're able to operate where we're reporting that they can operate possible.
Right. And then when you were going through your testing and screening, did you find that having the windshield wiper in like harsher environments like heat, different heat, humidity, like extreme cold, would that affect the function of the wiper motor?
Yeah, we have some what we call qualification testing that was required by the FDA under the Emergency Use Authorization. So we did perform some tests that I wouldn't say excessively low or excessively high temperatures, but definitely wanted a top and bottom to our standard room temperature testing that we've been doing. And our hot and cold testing exhibited, no major issues with the performance. But once again, being that this is a non, standard medical device, it's something that we need to research. But you also have a little bit of confidence going in, knowing that motors such as these, when they're attached in commercial automotive vehicles, they operate in rain, snow, wind, all that. So we had a little bit of confidence going in, but just wanted to make sure that we validated through testing that they're able to operate where we're reporting that they can operate.
And then what type of repeatability do windshield wiper motors have, and like what's the failure rate?
That's a good question. I know we did a good amount of research into that, and I unfortunately don't know the numbers off the top of my head. We could maybe follow up and provide them to you. But there's certainly a minimum number of cycles that each of these motors just coming off an assembly line from the factory that they're certified to operate at. For the purposes of manufacturing our devices, obviously, if we're trying to respond to a pandemic, we don't want to be running every single one of the hundreds of devices that we're building for weeks at a time to validate that they're working. So we did devise a strategy of just pulling large numbers of representative devices and performing long duration qualification testing, and then performing sufficient levels of acceptance testing on each device to give us confidence that they're all operating in family with each other. So we did do a whole lot of extensive testing, and I think we had one ventilator that we ran for I want to say about 2 months straight, continuously without a motor failure. And so tests like that, once again, just add to the database of information that we use to assess our confidence levels in the operation of the device.
Awesome. Yeah, it looks like you guys have done pretty extensive work in testing, and we were very impressed when we were collaborating with you guys through the BBC. It's particularly with the group at UC Irvine. It was, yeah, your engineering team is pretty on point, so to speak.
Thank you.
I would say if you guys had anything else that you wanted to perhaps share with, bless you, with our audience. I think, this has been really like awesome and informative of what you guys are up to right now and kind of like your next steps and what you're doing in the world. Is there anything, we just wanted to open it up for you guys to kind of just speak directly to our audience about your product or your process?
Yeah, I mean, the comments that I'll add is I think this really brings out the best in engineers being able to work on a project like this. I think I speak for a lot of the members on our team who, when we spooled up on this at the very end of March, beginning of April, it was basically a 6 or 8 week sprint of 12 to 16 to 18 hour days, 7 days a week, learning from the experts, learning from our medical advisors, and devising a plan to make a device that's manufactured and robust, and set up an assembly line. And I think we get a lot of value and enjoy absolutely our day jobs of building rockets. I think it's about the best job you can have. But there aren't too many opportunities, in someone's career that you can actually approach a problem or a device like this and really try and make a difference in the world. And you could see that in the faces of every single one of the people on the Virgin Orbit team who worked on this project. Every time it was another late day or another weekend work, folks were just willing to come in because it's one of the most important causes, I think, of this generation, at least. So I think that's just speaking from an engineer's perspective. I think it's one of the most rewarding projects I've ever worked on.
Thank you so much for giving us a little bit of your time and answering my questions. Is there anything else you would like to add?
Yeah, I'll just share one last closing comment here. First of all, I totally agree with everything Kevin said. We're in an industry where people are always pretty motivated and pretty excited about what they're doing, but this was something special, unlike anything I'd ever done before, and I feel honored to have gotten to work on it. The other thing, I just want to talk a little bit about the BBC, and I hope I won't make anyone blush too much, but it was just such a pleasure and an honor to be able to have that group to guide us in this. Between Dr. Wong, Dr. Govin, Dr. Burke, so many others, having this army of incredibly smart human beings who literally just said, call me anytime. And we took them up on that offer and did call them at weird hours with very urgent phone calls because I'm on the phone with the FDA in my other ear, and I don't know anything about this question they're asking me. While they were also doing their normal jobs and seeing patients or doing research or whatever else, was just so phenomenally useful. As Kevin has alluded to, engineers love to solve problems, but they do their best work when they have some constraints and when they have a clear goal at the end of the day. And this was such a new project for us that I think we could have taken, if we were working by ourselves, a year to figure out what kind of ventilator does someone need and how would a doctor actually use it. Being able to shortcut a year of research with, a 5-minute phone call with a real doctor, and then 10 minutes of having someone come in and look at a prototype was just extraordinarily useful. So I want to express my personal gratitude to all the folks in the BBC. It's been wonderful also to see, people who have called in, other people who have been working on similar devices or devices that are similar in spirit, even if they're quite different in design, that have all called into the BBC calls and had pretty much an open book to share their thoughts on how they did the design and how their FDA process went and what setbacks they had in testing and how they've been able to get around problems with the supply chain. It was just such a great spirit of camaraderie and everyone pushing really, really hard in the same direction to solve a common challenge that was incredibly inspiring and motivating to work with.
Well, I'm glad that the Bridge Ventilator Consortium and Virgin Orbit could collaborate to create something very useful for society and helpful for a lot of people. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, no, this was great. Thank you so much.